What is going on, everyone? I am Daniel Hofflich, your party leader, and this is a premiere episode of Final Forecast. That's right, Final Forecast, a brand new show on Final Fan TV. And man, what I could not think of a better way to kick off our brand new show than with our esteemed guest. This is Schrodinger's baby seal. Before we begin, I have to say a public, thank you and appreciation for you, Baby Seal, because you reached out to us as soon as we started a Twitter. I don't know if you remember this, but as soon as we started the Twitter, you reached out, you sent us a message, and just offered your knowledge, offered your help. And I think that just is a testament to your character. I haven't even met you in person, but I knew you were a good guy. You know what I mean? So I'm excited to have you on the show finally. And this is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Have you on the show. We're going to be talking about, and we have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and this is Final Forecast. So what makes this different from Final Podcast is that Final Podcast is a basically look at back at Final Fantasy, our beloved franchise, or a look to the current day of Final Fantasy. This is Final Forecast. We're looking ahead. So let's get right into it. First of all, Baby Seal.
Well, welcome to everybody who's joining us, and thank you so much. I mean, you have a name, but your name officially on your birth certificate is Final Fan TV. So I'll just call you Fan TV. No,
If
that's
that's
not
how we're
fair.
doing it, because I'm calling you Baby Seal.
That's not fair. So because we're friends, you can call me Clark. That is my first name, and it's a pleasure to finally be on. I definitely want to support the community as much as possible, because there is a lot of beauty in the community. There's other stuff too, don't get me wrong, but you stood out immediately as a force for good. And I'll be honest that a little personal story. I saw you uh, defending somebody on Twitter, and it endeared me a little bit to you. And so that's what um, triggered me to reach out to you. Um,
Oh, thank you.
and and so just a brief overview of who I am. Brief overview. Um, I am Schrodinger's baby seal on Twitch, Twitter, basically all the stuff, YouTube. Um, I have a heavy mythology, heavy philosophy background, um, and a lot of education that specifically ties my lore knowledge to, for whatever strange reason, Final Fantasy VII, more than probably any other title in the series, although there is a lot of overlap. And in particular, I know you've established relationships with a good friend of mine, Mo Gallagher,
Mhm.
who's just got the sexiest accent you can possibly
Absolutely.
muster. And so
Absolutely.
we operate in kind of that field of just deep lore stuff. Um, and and I have a little bit of exciting news, and that's that I'm finally through a legal hurdle. So some of my fans that have consumed my mythology morsels that I had to remove because I got essentially DMCA'd uh, by uh, by a major university, we'll just say. Um, that statute of limitations is up because I'm old now, and so I will be able to re-release some of that stuff, and I've got some new ones, and you may just get a new one today after we
Ooh.
dig into some remake stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Exclusive to Final Fan TV, man. I feel honored. Thank you so much. Yeah, so wow. Final forecast right now. We're looking ahead, and man, does it look crowded. I
Yeah,
love it. I love it. It's just great. I've been hype all week. first of all, let's get right to it, man. Let's get right to the 3 Final Fantasy games, Final Fantasy VII games that were just announced not too long ago. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, Final
Mhm.
Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and Final Fantasy VII First Soldier. Now, take your pick, man. Which one do you want to dive into first?
Um, well, I would actually like to dig into, I think because it's probably what people are most excited about is Remake Intergrade. Um,
Absolutely.
that's immediate, and I think because of the divisive nature of the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake and just the wild amounts of speculation that have come, it's the most uh, immediate potential answers to some of our questions. It provides actual lore, a little bit of mystery, and it gets us closer to the next part. And so I think that's probably the most exciting to get into. I don't know if you wanted to queue up the trailer and try and play that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can do that. As we talk about it. So first of all, we obviously know the the gist of it at this point. If you're watching it, if you're watching this, you probably know that this is going to be a PS5 enhanced game version of the of Final Fantasy VII Remake that released last year. We got updated visuals. You have the performance quality mode, allowing you to play it at 60 frames per second. We got updated textures, no more texture pop-ins. We're going to be okay with them doors. I guarantee you it's going to be fine. Um, yeah, and we also have updated backdrops, updated character models. I think Cloud's arms got a little bit bigger. I'm not sure. I, but yeah, we've got a lot of good things in there. But as you said, it's the Yuffie DLC that everybody's kind of really excited about, and yeah,
And I bet you Ultima is one of the guys that's really, really tuning in for this particular conversation. What is
awesome.
this ultimate materia? What is driving Yuffie uh, and um, and this bizarre new character into Midgard?
Hmm.
And immediately, right off the bat, when we talk about a weird materia and then there's deep ground stuff, everybody's mind goes to Dirge of Cerberus.
Hmm.
And so early speculation was the proto materia. Um, I'm not discounting that as a possibility. We don't know yet the level of canonicity that Dirge of Cerberus had. But if they are treating it as pure canon, um, and major spoilers ahead, by the way,
Oh
if
yeah.
you guys didn't know, uh, currently the proto materia should reside with Vincent in his body through bizarre Dirge of Cerberus logic, and so that's where that is right now. Uh, other other things I've heard thrown out are the black materia.
Mm,
That's it's not that. We just know because there's this whole thing. Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was sort of a whole deal. Um, Aerith got domestically abused over it, so it was an ordeal. Uh, it could be one of the huge materia. That's actually not a terrible. If it is something established, it's kind of up there. That's not a terrible idea. We know that somehow or other, Avalanche is digging its way into Shinra HQ at some point during the story. The timing of the mission seems to line up with Avalanche HQ, and so it's possible that where Yuffie and Sonon pop into the building is in fact level 61, which is we find out is where Scarlet is using her human ottoman and also trying to fabricate huge materia. So there might be some huge materia there that relates to Scarlet. Um, for those of you that don't know, there was a Scarlet fight cut from the game, from the original remake game. You can see the concept art still in the digital art book. She had like a sweet minigun. Probably would have would have been a little too bloated. I'm not surprised, but if any part of the legacy were to pop in, um, that could be it. But if I were to just if you were to put a gun to my head, say, hey, what is it? Probably something new. My guess
Mhm.
is it's something new, something interesting, something specific to Wutai, because it sounds like we are going to get a really enhanced view of the Wutai struggle. First thing that uh, Yuffie announces herself as a member of the new Wutai government. So
Mhm.
already, just that sentence alone establishes this new conflict that is that has only been hinted at in like the most peripheral of Wutai knowledge that's available in the lore currently.
On that
So
note, I kind of thought, judged based off of Yuffie's character,
mhm.
and how she acts and stuff like that, and what she did in the original, I'm almost, I kind of almost wanted to bet that like she doesn't have a government. Like it's just kind of her thing. Like she's just, I'm part of the new Wutai government because she's just like she didn't like the way that they were handling things. She didn't like the way that they kind of submitted. And maybe she grabbed a handful of followers that kind of, that like Yuffie. But I kind of just feel like she's just kind of on her own here. She's just kind of doing her own thing.
I do get a sense of that.
Mhm.
The the fact that she is just able to walk into Avalanche though, and Avalanche is aligned and aware.
That's
That
true.
establishes a couple things. One, that the rumors that you hear that sound like propaganda that Avalanche is backed by Wutai are in fact true.
Mhm.
But that is actually not new information. It was strangely confirmed in a very bizarre little section of the original remake Ultimania that came along with the game's release. It was just this weird off sentence. Um, we had a couple translators look at it just to make sure that this major piece of data, a lore, was being
Slipped in there.
wasn't like a slip translation or something like that. And so Remake Ultimania did in fact confirm that Wutai is helping with the Avalanche insurrection.
Mhm.
Um, some things of note regarding Wutai's involvement is that whoever Sonon is seems to be Wutai. I mean, not just the weapon, but all the motif seems very Wutai. There's a bunch of little ties
I
to
just kind of
Wutai.
had a revelation real
Yeah,
quick. I'm gonna get this out there because I see Vincent posted in there real summon. Oh, and look, he says it right there at the top. I'm sorry, I thought I thought of it as soon as I saw real summon material, but
yeah,
maybe they are after Leviathan, because of Leviathan's
yeah.
ties to Wutai and the fact that Shinra kind of took it and then disgraced it by mass producing it type thing.
I
But
think it's
yeah.
going to be Leviathan Zero or like
Mm.
Leviathan Sin.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. It's kind of given the Bahamut. Uh,
Right.
um, yeah, that's cool.
I for sure like the Leviathan is the cultural summon of Wutai, um,
Hmm.
and so I wouldn't be surprised if it's something along those lines, or just something new in general. I would love it to be Zirconiad related, but again, you would have to alter the canonicity, and I'm just not so certain they're going to do that. Um, it uh, I thought maybe they were going to do that, like at the beginning of yesterday or at the beginning of the announcements. Like maybe they're establishing two continuities, but we'll get into why I don't think that's the way it is anymore. Once we get to the other two games, um, other really, like the as much as Yuffie was exciting and and I was excited to see the new textures and new character and fact that it was like not what anybody predicted,
Yeah.
in terms of a DLC episode. As
Hmm.
exciting as that was, I will tell you that when I saw Vice show up, that was when, and I could hear unnoise canceled Sleep Easy. Like I could really hear him. I thought he was dying on the other end. Like his face had to have inverted during that. Um, and so that was a really interesting twist. And I
Mhm.
think that the most exciting thing about that is not just the deep ground Vice stuff, but that the way that we're probably going to interface with Vice is virtually, like in the VR
Yes.
simulator. And I
Yes.
cannot think of a better way to introduce that character than in a way that is so beautifully inconsequential to the greater narrative. Like it's so wonderful the way they did that. And it even ties into the lore in an interesting way. Um,
Yeah, because
and
he's still chained up down there. I mean, right?
well, okay, so I would like if you can, I don't know if you have the ability to maximize my screen.
Sure.
I will
I
show
can
this
try.
little beautiful slideshow. And it's just a 3 image slide. So,
Nope. Sorry.
okay, well, the first slide, which is rolling around here, um, simply says, 3 years ago, while I was still running about looking for Sephiroth, I took it upon myself to distribute my data, my
Mm.
mind, my knowledge, my inner being across the worldwide network. And even though my body had died and the world had been left in ruin, I survived in a virtual reality. So that's pretty cool context. And so even though the vague Nomura language during the Famitsu interview that coincided um, with the release of all the trailers sort of says that, well, Vice is part of a boss that you guys fight. It's not part of the Yuffie content. I doubt they're not related in some way because we do see that Yuffie makes it to deep ground, like legit
Mm-hmm.
deep ground, not just like referential deep ground with Bahamut Zero and like no other deep ground stuff. Like legit deep ground with deep ground soldiers doing deep ground stuff. And so I wouldn't be surprised if some chain of events that happens causes Vice to upload himself into S&D, possibly connect with mini Vice, Chadley, and and find some way to integrate those two characters. For those of you that don't know, aren't familiar with Sturgis Cerberus lore, S&D is like the Gaia internet. It's like
Yeah.
Shinra's version of the internet that follows like no logic or physical barriers. Like there's no way our Wi-Fi could get down underground. But anyways, so it's basically their version of the internet, and Vice, with the help of Hojo and a bunch of other convoluted plot devices, finds his way into the World Wide Web, and you end up fighting him and turning him into the devil and all sorts of other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the inclusion of Vice that kind of confirms Genesis at this point. You know what I mean? Like at this point,
So
that kind of confirms, right?
right, and so the way that Nomura described the Vice scenario, he was asked if that was all, and he was like, "I can't talk about it."
Yeah. You
No,
classic Nomura.
and so well, yeah,
He's
Nomura
really excited about
can be a little silly, but also like the way he answered that made it sound like Vice might be the tip of the iceberg. And again, I would love for the only way, the like if the only way that we interface as the players with Genesis and the rest of the Sphiets of color, except for Rosso, she can stay, is through the VR simulator. Like that's great. It's
it. Yep.
referential. It says, hey, they exist. We didn't forget that we did that to you guys, but also The only thing you have to do is beat them in a virtual fight, and then you can go off
Yeah.
with the cannon and not have to worry that um, you know uh, Genesis is going to interfere with Sephiroth killing Aerith or all the other things that the fandom
Yeah, every like
demands.
the
Yeah,
possibilities that are
yeah,
just making everyone so, and include myself included, that are just
yeah.
so nervous. I would be so on board with, yeah, like a secret boss, like that kind of, ruby weapon and emerald weapon aren't so secret anymore. Hey, here's your secret boss that you have to seek out and discover yourself. It's Genesis. I'm cool with that as long as it doesn't affect the greater narrative
Yeah.
of the original seven. Um, but it also, in the same vein, I'm kind of like, hey, would they really put a character that was, meant to be super important as just kind of like a side boss? But
You mean Genesis?
yeah, I'm talking about Genesis. Yeah, like it's kind of like, man, if he's gonna be in the game, I feel like he's gonna have a really important role, just because he was given such an important role.
Now, don't get me wrong. Nomura, big act fan. I mean, even though it's not often said, he did in fact not only design Genesis based literally on Gact, he used Gact as his referential framework for Squall.
Yeah.
And then that wasn't close enough to Gact. So he couldn't handle it. He's like, no, we're just putting Gact in. And Nojima wasn't allowed to work on that game. So it was just like it was going to happen. Um, but Nomura's that Square Enix is not so, I don't think anyways, they're not so unaware of the divisive nature of that character in even in Japan, that they wouldn't downplay his significance, because
Mhm.
Genesis is never, and developer interviews actually do confirm this, and I'm not just saying that to like prove my point. If you need the citations, I'll dig them up. DM me. Um, that Genesis was specifically meant to be a foil uh, for Zach's character story, and
Mhm.
consistently Final Fantasy VII and Remake are supposed to be Cloud's story. He's the protagonist. Putting Genesis in as like a deutero antagonist, or like even even somebody that competes on an equal frame rate as like Hojo would be really detrimental to that narrative drive. But
Yeah, it's the Amazing
you're right.
Spider-Man 2 effect. You don't want to bring in too many villains.
They could go full Kojima with it though, where people hated Raiden so much that he
Mhm.
made like 4 games with Raiden, like just as a middle finger to the
That
fans.
really feels like a Nomura thing to me. Like it just feels like they just love to mess with you.
Yeah, they
Um,
backseated him though. That was another bit of news that came out of the Famitsu interview, is that he's no longer the director of the games. He's the
mhm.
creative director of the series, of the
Hamaguchi
anthology.
is in charge now, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about that yet, but hey,
I'm kind of excited because in that recent interview where he said that he was so inspired by Horizon Zero Dawn
mhm,
and its sequel, it really, and this is the moment to do it. And what gets me excited, open world, man. If you're excited about and inspired by Horizon Zero Dawn, which had a beautiful, varied open world,
yeah,
um, I was in the mindset of like, okay, there's no way that they're going to make Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 open world. There's just no way. It's way too much. I was in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it'll be open area like Final Fantasy 14, for example.
yeah,
And that's what I was kind of thinking. And then I'm like, man, now that he's in charge, he was inspired by Horizon Zero Dawn and that huge open world, and he specifically called it out, and that's kind of, I feel like everything that these guys say feels, you should look into it. You know what I mean? Like everything they say feels purposeful. um
yeah.
yeah, so the fact that they brought that up kind of had me thinking. But in like I said, I'm not expecting a full open world, but yeah, if it is, that's insane. If it's open area, I'm okay with that. But now we're getting into the future, part two. and I'm just kind of rambling on about it. I'm sorry about that, but like, uh, for me, Final Fantasy VII all about discovery and exploration as far as that goes, and I feel like the open world, lends itself to that. So we'll see how it goes. Gated progression needs to happen. Being able to go in a submarine, being able to fly the high wind around the world. You're not gonna be able to do that kind of stuff with the you
Corridor
know
system.
corridor system. Yeah, so we'll see
So
how that goes.
yeah, I think there are solutions to that, and um, it's been clear from the get, like when the first Ultimania for Remake came out, like they didn't know what they were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Hamaguchi's inclusion, has he did a few things that were really divisive in game production. Like he's ultimately responsible for us fighting Sephiroth at the end, which um, a lot of people didn't like. I did. I thought it was a good way to bring our focus into the series. But there are elements of Horizon Zero Dawn that could really benefit uh, Remake, and the the hugeness of the world might not translate perfectly to the way that the the progressive story of
Mm-hmm.
of Remake would be told. Um, but there are some things about Horizon Zero Dawn's like open and engaging combat with like these massive monsters without
Mm-hmm.
any like HP gates, or like you're never gonna blow your limit load on on a cut scene in Horizon Zero Dawn. And I so I'm hoping that there are elements of that in this too, uh, in Hamaguchi's directorial inclusion. Um,
Just to touch base with chat real quick. We do have Tommy 86 saying most likely open zones in my opinion. So kind
yeah,
of agrees there. I feel like they are aiming to surprise with just how open it will be though,
I
and
agree.
that's a good point. And plus we're running on, and the fact that Yuffie DLC is PS5 exclusive um makes me think that yeah, part 2 is being made for PS5, and I don't think we're
Yeah,
going to see a PS4 PS5. But yeah,
he
so
almost he Nomura almost said that in the interview with Famitsu. He almost said, "We're preparing you for PS5 for part two." Like he didn't
yeah,
say explicitly, PS4 guys, like get your hopes way down, but he kind of implied it.
I would say so. And then by the time that comes out, we're looking at maybe 2023 is where I'm thinking. Maybe late 2022. So hopefully everyone has a PS5 at that point. But yeah, I'm thinking that they're building towards PS5.
Mhm.
And if we're talking big open worlds, the PS5 is capable of doing this stuff. It's capable of rendering in textures and rendering in distances, you know, beyond what we've seen before in an open world.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me excited about the potential of an open world. But yeah, I am in agreement that it's just gonna be way too much. Ultimo 786 says, it's hard to have your cake and eat it too, which
Yeah.
makes sense. I mean, we got a phenomenal story, and but I do want my cake, and you know what I mean. So I
Right.
like I like
Yeah.
I like cake and I like eating it. So.
That's true. I do too. It's a thing. Um,
But yeah, go ahead.
so talking about Remake Intergrade, um, we're not just getting Intergrade. Um, we're getting PS5 Remake too, which is really that's a big topic. Um, I'll admit that I had zero concern on the subject. Like it didn't even dawn on me that people would be upset about that
Mhm.
because I lucked into a PS5 at launch. Like it was just one of those things. So I forgot that's a $500 paywall for uh, for people to be able to. I know people that bought a PS4 Pro for Remake. Like I know people like that. So
Mhm.
I very much understand that frustration. Despite not being able to directly sympathize with it. I certainly empathize with it. But now that I've acknowledged their despair. I would just like to express my extreme excitement about photo mode. Um,
Yes.
potentially like potentially new like stuff. Like so we know that we're gonna get a Vice VR battle for Cloud and Co. What else does that mean? Like we're not just getting like you're not just gonna get thrust at level 50 with no extra equipment. And do a hard mode Vice. There's going to be progression. There's likely going to be maybe a new weapon or two for people. Probably new materia. Like there are design um, like inconsistencies in the original battle system. Like for instance, the Magic Plus materia establishes this maximum that uh, that the Magic Plus materia can exceed your magic stat, and that's 100%, but each one only gives you 25%, and you only get 2 in the game. So there's these like limitations that are built in that are never even theoretically possible. And so I wonder if they're gonna, make some modifications to that. So we might see new materia, we might see new summon, we might see these new features. I'm super excited for that. As somebody that just loves the combat, I would really like a, a boss rush. That
Oh
was
my
one
God,
of
me
the
too.
best things that Kingdom Hearts did with like its international and final mixes is these boss rush modes. I would
Hmm.
play those for hours, no questions asked.
Yeah.
Um, so
That,
I'm excited about the possibility of all that. Uh,
mhm.
my secret hope is that they fix every texture in the game except for that fucking door. I think that would be such a
I would love
self-aware
it.
meta joke for them to do. Um, and it was part of the experience. It was just like looking at
Yeah.
these unbelievably detailed character models walking through a Play-Doh PS1 world. Like it was
At
weird.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leave the door. Oh my, that would be a beautiful Easter egg. Um, yeah, so that's where I'm getting at with this Yuffie DLC. Now we're talking about the textures, and I think this is kind of it kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that it is PS5, and they said they're getting you prepping you ready for PS5. And we're talking about the I guess not controversial. It is controversial that it is not coming out for PS4. Whereas the original Final Fantasy VII remake came out last year, PS4. It runs fine. There's your doors and your your pop-ins and stuff like that, but it runs on PS4, and it's been proven that it can run on PS4. And I think people are upset that they're like, wait, how come I can't get that on my PS4 if I have I've already played Final Fantasy VII remake on my PS4. I know it's possible. So it gets my mind thinking, and this is, I'm only half kidding when I say this. I posted it I posted it on Twitter, but I'm only half kidding. What if this Yuffie DLC is more than meets the eye? So we're just wild conjecture here. uh, what if we leave Midgar at the end and you get a taste of what's outside Midgar, and the fact that, oh my God, this is only possible on PS5 type thing,
I
or
don't
something that is only possible on PS5.
I don't think that's that wild.
Pipe
And
dream.
I think the reason that we can maybe conjecturalize that is let's talk about the title Intergrade, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Nomura gave a description of why he chose Intergrade. And it one demonstrated like sort of a fundamental misunderstanding of the word's definition. The two, it established that what he was trying to accomplish with the title is that it bridged the two titles together. It
Mm-hmm.
bridged Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 with Part 2. So that would infer that it ends after Remake. It
Mm-hmm.
bridges the two together. And we don't know how Yuffie gets to the forest that you find her in. We don't know, or Yuffie. I've got a very bad habit with that. I'm trying to break.
That's all right.
Um, where Yuffie makes it to the forest. It's on the same continent when you can first um, get her canonically, although you can get her anywhere along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know the way that they seem to get to Midgar or to deep ground, we don't know how they get out. You know, they may end up on the other side of that hill, and the other side of that hill where the crystal, where the cavern is that you get the misroll from, and you have to buggy around in order to get Great Gospel before spoilers, dies real bad. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, that's right on the other side of that hill. So it's
Yeah.
possible that, you know, they're creating a geographic line there. And the deep ground soldiers, part of the lore is they can like show up in other towns, and they get there from like a series of sometimes underground tunnels and sewers. Also sometimes like a confusing array of helicopters and other stuff that you see nowhere else, but that's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, you pop it. Do you think that at some point during this, and you made a really good point, it could end after uh remake did. Do you think we'll see I don't know what's going on the opposite side of that portal that they walk through. So if Yuffie is there when the ending is happening, maybe we get to see that side of what's going on. Um, Maybe we get to see the side of somebody who doesn't see the whispers
Right.
flying around and going. Um, but there's it's got to be, you know, what I mean, I think we're going to get something, and it would be
I,
also really cool, a nod or a basically, here you go, guys who really wanted the ending of remake to end the way that original did. Maybe she just goes out the, like how the in the original they go down and they walk out
yeah,
they decide who's the party leader. um Maybe they give that to Yuffie for for you guys. You step outside and you see the open world, and that would just be, and it would just be a big tease. It would be
yeah.
awesome. But yeah, so
And so how this all relates to the whisper stuff really depends on what is actually happening. And you know, I've got a variety of theories. I think that Sleep Easy and I sort of arrived at the same kind of general consensus, you know, over the course of our relationship. And so I hate to like cop out, but like if you want to know like the nitty gritty of what I think is happening with the whispers, um, watch all 10 hours of his videos. Uh,
yeah, I love it.
the so, but to answer you, to agree with you, I think we're going to get some kind of perspective that briefly cracks the door open to what's really going on and gives us a little bit more context, either
I agree.
from Yuffie's perspective,
Mhm.
or we may get a secret final ending to the base game as a reward for, say, beating Vice, all the Fiats of Color, Genesis, and you know, all the super bosses
Mhm.
in the VR. You know, we may get something like that, some kind of completionist take, where we see a little bit more, just a little bit more. Um, they're obviously not going to solve the mystery. They will probably just give us more questions to
Mhm.
keep us upset until, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
100%. They are
yeah,
going to drop something that's going to make people talk. Because, it's been a year since remake and people are running out of theories. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So they're going to give you something to keep people talking until the next game. Um, yeah,
I
I
I
almost
do
guarantee that.
I do want to address just a couple things in the chat
Sure,
that people
absolutely.
have said. Um,
Absolutely.
there was one I saw. Yeah, so that was one of the things that I've seen floating around, and one of the very first thing I thought Ultima was that. So I guess we're probably going to see uh, uh, Yuffie and Sonon be responsible for saving uh, Biggs, and maybe even Wedge, but possibly Biggs. Like that's, you know, how that that works out. And part of the reason we can kind of say that is if you watch the Avalanche HQ cutscene in the trailer, there is a little like next to the guy who's dressed like Shears that probably isn't Shears from before Crisis, but probably one of the three, Al, probably. Just a wild guess. There is a floor plan and a plan of attack. That floor plan does match Shinra HQ. There's two helicopters in that picture. It seems to be part uh, of the specific set of events that Wedge talks about when in the beginning of chapter 17 with Cloud, like, hey, that's what that explosion was. It was HQ. And so the fact that Sonon and Yuffie are part of that operation means that they could get involved. There's some differences between the Japanese trailer and the American trailer or English trailer that specify that they become aware of platefall. And so we do know that Yuffie and Sonon are following Avalanche HQ because they hear that the plate is coming down. So there's a chance they might be there. So that's a good theory. Ultima.
Yeah, and also Vincent Graymore kind of call out this one. The Whispers aren't preventing Yuffie from being there, which kind of if Yuffie wasn't supposed to be there, they would be stopping her, correct?
Okay, so this is again, there's a lot of. I'll give a base primer on the Whisper thing for me. If you look at the assessments, and this matches up in Japanese as well, the three Whisper harbingers that are based on Laz, Yazoo, and Kadaj, which are Viridai, Cresceo, and Rubrum. If you look at their assessments, it very specifically says that they manifest from a future timeline, and in order to protect the timeline that gave birth to them. So the language is very self-interested. And so the Whispers don't necessarily get involved because something is different than the OG. The OG, like Metascape, needs to be removed from the conversation. It's whatever set of events created them that they are getting involved in, because there are a lot of discrepancies with the plot and OG. So does that mean that the Whispers are going to get involved if Yuffie wasn't supposed to be there? Well, only if whatever she does
if it
affects probably Meteor Fall, probably Genova related stuff, because as there's a lot of very subtle but obvious connections between the negative life stream, Genova, and the Whispers. We kind of get a sense that in fact the Whispers are Genova in some way, shape, or form. So
here's one thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
So just to answer that, I would be astonished though if when they get into deep ground, we don't see like a glimmer of the Whispers in some way, shape, or form. I would be astonished. Or what we'll see is that like they get into deep ground as the events of OG are ending, and so the Whispers disappear, but we might see that event, and then it's a free-for-all. So we'll see.
Okay, there's one thing that's been going around, and it's a theory, and I'm kind of curious of what your thoughts are on it. I see it a lot, and I just don't know if I can get behind it. There's a theory going out that this is a rewrite. There's no connection. There's no future timeline. There's no going back to the past. There's none of that. This is just a rewrite of the original story. I think there's way too much to show that this, there's got to be some kind of connection. You know what I mean? So I've seen it that it's just kind of like it's just being rewritten. It's just giving you little morsels of the compilation. They're there, but it's just a rewrite.
Um, I mean, and it's based to at the base of what you're saying. You could say that it is in fact being rewritten.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I understand what you're saying. Like
Hmm.
that this means kind of nothing. That this is not truly meta commentary. It's more just like this is the new story of Final Fantasy VII,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and uh, I think the truth probably lies a little bit in between. I think there's less meta commentary than the narrative, than the sort of fan narrative has created around it. And I love Max Dude, but he popularized this kind of joke that the whispers are a representation of the purest fan base, and that's I don't actually think that was the intention of the creators. I don't think they were trying to be mean to anybody. That wasn't it. I think it's just kind of the story they wanted to tell. They wanted, it seems really obvious that they were trying to create an an obvious sense of unknown and fear in the fan base that they were no longer in control of how the story was going to unfold. And so you cannot capitalize on that relationship with the fan base and then claim that it is completely unrelated to the fan base. Like you
yeah.
cannot say that it doesn't relate to the narrative in some way if it
Well,
capitalizes on people's expectations of the narratives coming out the way
yeah.
that it's supposed to.
And
Um,
the next game coming out is Ever Crisis, and that that's a
It's
full
it
comp.
goes First Soldier, then Ever Crisis.
I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. But there is a game coming out that literally encapsulates the compilation, and I feel
Yeah.
like releasing that is almost like, hey, you're gonna want this. You know what
So
I
so
mean?
the first thing that I think a couple people said when we saw Ever Crisis is like, oh, okay. So we've got the remake continuity, and then we've got basically Ever Crisis to retell the original story of the whole compilation the way that it once did. Um, and it's turn based. It's kind of like ultra fan servicey. Here's my OG. You know, um, that was what a lot of people thought is. Oh, okay. So here's this alternative product that's a gotcha game. You know, fuck you, enjoy. Like, um, but and I could see like at face value why that's what that kind of looks like. And in fact, a lot of my fan base friends that hated Remake were super excited for Ever Crisis for that very reason.
Mm,
However, what we do know about the first soldier is that just that it is takes place 30 years prior or 30-ish years prior to the events of Final Fantasy VII and Remake, which puts it in 1977 in Gaian time. And that one of the clearest, most obvious things that you can see in that trailer is Beagle goddamn Stamp. Beagle Stamp shows up in that trailer. And then we read the interview where Nomura very specifically says that the first soldier will factor into the Ever Crisis story.
mhm.
So we have now connected a a you know a plot thread specific to the remake continuity, which is Stamp, which is a new character for remake. Um, and obviously like the key to whatever bizarre time fuckery is happening. And that is now canonized into this retelling of the compilation. So I think there is an attempt with Ever Crisis to reunify the compilation into something that fits more into the remake narrative. So is it being rewritten kind of from the start? Well, in some bits, yes. But I think also it is meant to tie directly to the OG experience. And I don't think that any of this means that, um, this is not going to tell a story about fundamental loss, about grief, about the planet and our relationship with it. I don't think that any of this means that that's going away. I don't really think that's a threat. Um,
Mm,
but to answer your question on, well, is it just getting rewritten and is it just
mm.
including bits of the compilation? Yes, it's also doing more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just seen that floating around, and I was kind of curious of what you thought about all that.
It's a
Um,
way to reduce like the overall concept of Sleepy's videos is to say, oh, he's just saying it's being retold in a different way, and then all the compilation stuff didn't happen anymore. It's just being alluded to. But I think it's not being alluded to. I think it's being heavily respected and being carefully thought about. Like Yuffie's inclusion into Midgar is not actually that it's not impossible. We don't know where the fuck Yuffie was, during descent from December 9th until whenever she's at. Like those during those days, we don't know where she is, how she got there. So
yeah,
we can't say that it's breaking any of the continuity yet. The
true.
only thing that's very, very different, like in a super concerning way that everybody's freaked out about, is the Zack stuff. And you know what? That's my big prediction. We will see just a little bit more Zack in Remake Interlude. Like
Just a just a
just like
little bit
one
more
more second. Like
where he just
one more
collapses and
super
falls down and he
upsetting
dies.
second of Zack.
Just where he just he walks up and collapses on the cliff and he
He
hands the
just
sword
dies.
and
Yeah,
he just dies. Yeah, that's it. That's what we'll see.
yeah. That's that's a bunch of people's wet dream. Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe. Yeah, that would be the thing that would get people talking. That we were talking about earlier, where this is going to bridge the gap between part one and part two. Excuse me. Is show Zach, and that will get people talking. If he's like walking in the Midgar or something like
Mhm.
that, good lord, people would go nuts. Yeah, I'm very curious where all that's going. Thank you for indulging the theories there for a little while. um I would like to take a moment to just celebrate how like accurate Yuffie looks, and like, what I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
just absolutely just nailed
And
it.
and the little details they gave her both like both are like Moogle Shroud, which is like this great, like reference to Dirge of Cerberus,
Dirge of Cerberus again.
but also just like the color in her headband is just it's so great. She's got a lot of she's got uh, crescent moon stuff, and that ties deeply into Before Crisis lore. There's some cool Wutai stuff that you can get into with that, and I want to talk about it. I really, really do, but I would rather you all, after this stream is over, go to MJ Gallagher's YouTube channel and
100%.
watch his breakdown on Yuffie's design. Um,
Mm.
that's really cool. And then also like that, like just how cool um, her shuriken holder looks. Like that whole concept, like they made that real. Like I got really like goosebumpy about that when I saw that. I was like,
Yeah.
how am I so excited for like the most annoying character in the game? How am
And
I
she
so excited? Like, how am I standing Yuffie so bad right now?
the way she runs is
Yeah,
accurate to the original.
yeah.
At first I was like, man, why is she running? And like for just a split second I was like, why is she running like that? And then I went, oh my god, that's right. It's a direct reference to the original. I
That's right.
love it.
That's right, Gene. Crisis Core as well.
What are we talking about?
The Crescent unit.
Oh, okay, yeah, the
Um,
Crescent Unit is an
mhm.
organization in Chris. Okay,
No relation to Lucrecia Crescent, apparently, that we can know.
okay.
Um, so yeah, there's that. I don't know what you want to delve into next, but I do have some interesting stuff to say about the first soldier if we're on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go. Okay, so we I think we covered Intergrade. If anybody in chat has any questions about Intergrade, please sound off now.
Mhm,
And we're gonna jump into First Soldier after this because that is the next game to release. Comes out in 2021. That's this year.
mhm.
So we can expect to see it. kind of leaning probably towards like a late 2021. I'm thinking we'll probably see it around fall. That sounds about right. Like an autumn.
Sounds about right. Sounds like a good
Yeah.
idea,
Hmm.
if they're trying to space out interest
Yeah,
in
and
their
they'll probably.
franchise.
I wouldn't say actually I can't say probably because it's confirmed at this point. They said they will be doing a open beta or a closed beta to kind of test it out. So there's something to look forward to before the official release of it. But yeah, this is going to be a mobile battle royale, and here we go. King Valvados says, "Yeah, I have a question. Wait, I probably butchered that name, didn't I? Valvados. Valvados. That sounds about right, right? Yeah. Yeah, I got a question. How am I going to find and afford a PS5, Baby Seal? And I believe this is a very important question, and I'm glad that King asked it because you're talking to Schrodinger's Baby Seal right now, and he has the answer. And this is a Final Fantasy V exclusive. So go ahead and take it away, man.
Um, have you considered murder?
There you have it.
That there you go. I do hope. Okay, so a couple things on this. Um,
I'd kill for a PS5. That's Tifa's next one.
so PS5. I'm sorry. I don't know how. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. It's just like it sucks. King Barbados. No. So the truth though is we don't actually know if this is exclusive to PS5 or not. We just know it's not going to be on the PS4. They're not gonna announce a PC version of this game during the PlayStation State of Play, and they're probably not going to
Oh
do
yeah.
it a couple days after. If anything, there is a Microsoft event next month that they might announce. So there is a chance,
Hmm.
not promising anything. I don't have that kind of power. That there might be other options for you. Um,
Yeah. I
but
don't think. Yeah, I mean, like you might even be able to get it on Series X because there's no exclusive exclusivity for for the PS5 version. I'm not sure. Yeah, they haven't. They like
they
in the
haven't
trailer. It did
disclosed
say
the nature of their relationship at this point.
right, and
Um,
the exclusivity for remake ends April 12th or 10th. Um, and I imagine
the
that we'll see.
promotion of that, the ability to promote um, cross-platform games according to the contract. Somebody broke this down.
Hmm,
Actually, actually ends March 3rd due to the way the
okay.
contract was written. Because March 3rd
Okay.
was the original release date prior to the date, which is why, by the way, March 3rd appears on several coins in the game, several posters, uh, and several album covers, is because they were designing with that date in mind. But
Yeah.
so we could see an announcement that side skirts this particular issue as soon as March 3rd.
Yeah, that's
I
Wednesday.
do think that because of the way the console wars are going, um, Sony will fight tooth and nail for exclusivity on this
On the
over
Intergrade.
on Intergrade.
Mhm.
I do think that they will. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah, I mean, judging on the relationship that Square Enix and Sony have been having, of course, with Final Fantasy 16 being exclusive,
ribs.
is huh?
Oh, I'm just saying hi to ribs.
Oh,
Nice
okay.
wine rib.
So yeah, I would say on March 3rd, that's this Wednesday. I don't know if it's going to happen on that exact date, but shortly
No,
after that, I can imagine that Xbox will be announcing that Final Fantasy VII remake will be coming to Xbox, and I'd go as far as to say it may even hit Game Pass since it's being given away for PlayStation Plus. It might be a Game Pass launch day. Hey, here you go, Game Pass members. But the real conversation would Intergrade be released on Series X as well on June 10th, and that's an interesting one, as well as PC. Um,
that would
that
that would sell consoles.
yeah, that would
People would
be it,
be like,
and
I need this. Which console can I get? And they just pick
yeah,
the first one.
I feel like
So
Microsoft, Phil Spencer. probably on that. You know, they
Yeah,
probably want to see Remake at least hit Game Pass. But yeah,
sure.
so
Yeah, we'll
I
see.
can, you might have options if I'm
Um,
sure you
and
want
if
to stick
that
with
doesn't
PS5.
occur, rest
Mm.
assured, June 10th at like midnight of whatever time zone this game is released, I will be streaming it in diapers with an IV bag for your pleasure,
Oh
guys.
my gosh! Wow, wow. Who needs a PS5 when you can do that? Who can when you can watch that? Who needs a PS5 to play it themselves?
I can like I'm an acquired taste because for those of you that watch me stream, like I think I've spent an hour in one room just like counting books and like looking finding USA butterflies and stuff like that. I'm gonna be doing that. So just be warned. You might need to be real patient to get to the meat of the narrative.
Before we move on to First Soldier, Intergrade also, we're speaking of PS5, and I have to mention it because it was kind of a hidden thing that, I read it in the details. It's going to be taking advantage of the DualSense, which is really cool. So we
So
will be
will
getting
so will the PS5 upgrade, according to Nomura in the Famitsu. So
like,
the DualSense, the partial DualSense haptic feedback stuff
mhm.
will integrate into Remake proper
Yeah, you
as
said
well.
Intergrade. You said it. You said Intergrade.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, that's awesome. So I'm really kind of excited to see how they handle
Yeah,
haptic feedback, and if they, it wasn't written that they would do adaptive triggers.
right,
But maybe I don't. I mean, I don't see why they
right.
wouldn't, because you press the triggers to switch your characters, right? So
That
I
would
don't.
be upsetting if you could
Yeah,
do
I, mean,
that.
I don't
Yeah,
understand why they would do it, but
non-digitally. I
Haptic
only want to
feedback.
half switch to Barrett. I want to
You,
control them both at the same
to
time.
switch to Barrett, you really have to press down on that trigger. No, I'm because I love the haptic feedback. I know you have a PS5, so you've experienced it yourself. Astro's Playroom is a beautiful way to
Yeah,
experience the dual
yeah,
sense.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, I mean, the haptic feedback to feel the footsteps is a given. I feel like I really want that in every game, because when you play Astro, you feel that, you feel the little pitter patter at the bottom of the controller, and it adds just such an immersion to it. But what's
Yeah,
even cooler is, what if, like, if you let your mind run wild on it, you get, if Cloud gets hit with a fire spell, maybe we get like a little like a tingling feeling up the controller. The haptic feedback definitely immerses you into that game, more than I can say. You really do have to get your hands on it.
yeah.
So that's exciting. That's exciting. And then, of
One
course,
last note on Intergrade before we move on, and
yeah.
this was again one of those hidden things that you have to kind of like dig into the page on the store to learn, is that so with the digital deluxe edition of Remake Intergrade, you get a special weapon for Yuffie, the CAC star, and then also you get an access to a digital art book. The digital art book on the Remake Digital Deluxe is one of my favorite things to look at.
Mm,
So I'm super excited about that, and I'm excited about the mini soundtrack. You
yeah.
can't order the digital deluxe edition if you own the PS4 version. It doesn't let you. So I'm not allowed. So I was concerned, but if you
Mm,
like way in the fine print, it says that those three exclusive items will be available when the pre-order closes for individual purchase. So it's
okay.
probably they're probably going to be like $1 a piece, but you can buy those three things
That's
if you
good.
are forced into the upgrade path, like anybody who bought Remake was.
Yeah.
And then also for those of you that didn't see, but I think it's pretty widely distributed, the PlayStation Plus version of Remake is not eligible for the upgrade.
Right. That's good to point out too. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I wonder if they're going to also bring in the pre-orders that were the pre-order bonuses from Remake last year. Those extra bonus summons and stuff. If they would allow you to buy those individually as well. I feel like Intergrade should come with all of that. If I'm being
Yeah.
honest, that's
Oh
that's.
yeah.
But they didn't say anything on that. Yeah, and like you said, you just one last thing about Intergrade. I know we said this a couple, and there's one more thing about Intergrade. It's kind of going back. We kind of
Yeah.
briefly touched on it.
It's just
Photo
really
mode,
exciting.
baby.
It's really
Photo
exciting. Yeah.
mode. You talk about Sleep Easy popping off. For Wise V's Wise
Yes.
Wise Markets. Yeah, Wise Markets.
Vice. Yeah.
So you talk about Sleep Easy popping off for that. I was going nuts over photo mode, but
Me
I
too.
don't know why. I just really wanted this. I spent so much time in the original Final Fantasy
Hmm.
VII remake just trying to get my characters to line up in a cool pose.
Right. In a cool pose. Yeah. Me too. And like I remember having like replay cutscenes. Like I would quit out of the game just because I wanted that one shot.
Just to snap a
And
shot. Yeah.
and that's a dumb way to do it, but still, like I'm very excited as somebody that's ultra detail oriented too. Like I counted the amount of stamps that are in Remake. There
Oh
are
my god.
99 Beagle stamps, and some of them are hidden as fuck, man. It gets so
Yeah.
crazy how much weird little detail that there are. And so like photo mode for me is like an OCD scour.
You
It was
said there's
almost more
99.
exciting. Yeah,
I bet your OCD is killing you.
yeah. I just wanted that one more.
It's out there
Yeah,
somewhere.
look,
Go
more
find it.
angles to take photos of stamp posters with.
There it is.
Tommy says, "You know
Just
me so well."
photo mode's gonna help you find that 100th one.
That's great.
Oh wow, yeah. I'm going to be spending so much time. There was a poll that was going on Twitter, and it said, "How long do you think the Yuffie DLC is going to be?" And I voted 16 plus hours or more because I'll be spending most of that time in photo mode. All right, so let's go on. We got, like I said, the first soldier. It's the mobile Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale. So I never thought I would have those two things in the same title, but here we are. Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale mode. And honestly, it looks really good. I
I mean,
was kind
for
of
a
like,
mobile game, I was like, "Whoa, this is
look, yeah, you're
this looks
walking through. You've
great."
got
Yeah,
Aerith's house, and like these are different locations. And I was just kind of loving all the locations that you're going to be playing
yeah,
in. And I
yeah.
was trying to figure out, is this going to be one big map in the classic battle royale style, where like, is it
Hmm.
going to be all of Midgar and you can kind of explore? I'm leaning towards more of this is all like separate maps like you'll be
Yeah.
playing on.
I am too. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I also, you know, the the settings might be. I mean, we might be looking at very alpha footage of
Yeah,
what
oh,
the
yeah,
settings
definitely.
actually are,
Hmm.
um, be, because there are some chronological issues with the fact that these settings exist as they
Yeah,
do
true.
in um,
Oh,
in
sorry.
in 30 years prior to the first. The first soldier is supposed to be like in roughly 1977. Midgar was like constructed in 1976. So like the level of completion doesn't quite line up. There's a couple of possibilities. One, this could just be like
Hmm.
alpha footage. They'll get more consistent closer to release. But it's supposed to release this damn year. Like it's supposed to be this year. It might be a little later, but it says on the site this year. It looks pretty polished. It looks pretty complete. Um, Also, 30 years could be like a exaggeration, but there's some cool stuff in the trailer that I think there's a lot of like theory craft potential. There's Stamp, right off the bat. We just saw Stamp. But like for instance, Wall Market is not as Wall Markety. And that's because there's a history of Wall Markets. It's pretty well described by Aerith in Remake, but there's other lore supporting this, and that's that it became sort of like a no man's land. Like Shinra wouldn't touch it. They sort of let it be its own. private haven for debauchery. They would watch from afar and use it for subterfuge and stuff like that. And so it developed into this thing that the Dawn controlled. But before that, it was just part of Shinra's Undercity. And you can see that in the trailer, it's a mixture of those. It's like it's starting to develop into, this thing. And so what it points to is that there's some cool events that might get covered. And in Midgar in particular, one of the cooler events is the Sector 6 collapse. And it would be cool to see how that happened. So it's possible that this doesn't happen at one time, but it happens over a progression of time. Because we know that the church, despite looking super old, was actually constructed a year after the collapse of Sector 6, or in the year after. It was built specifically for the purpose of giving the people a place to grieve the people that were lost in the Sector 6 collapse. And so it showing up in this game is problematic if it is truly 30 years.
Yeah.
I think Elmira's house being a setting is probably the real reason why she hates soldiers, not because her husband died. That's because people just are playing Battle Royale in their front yard. I would hate soldier if they were doing that. Okay, that was dry humor. But the fact that there's soldiers and stuff outside of the house that eventually becomes Aerith, maybe we meet Elmira's husband. There's a chance canonically for that to happen. Man, if you look at the timeline for 30 years before Remake, 1977 is such a badass year. Like, they discovered Genova. Vincent is an active Turk. Think how cool it would be to see Vincent as an active Turk in this game. That would be rad. So the time period that this takes place is super fun and has all the story potential. Unfortunately, we are told that very little story happens in the game. Enough that it kind of is like a base backstory. And also, I am not a battle royale guy, so I will learn to be one for this game.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be on that. We're going to have to run.
We'll stream. Yeah, we'll do a tournament.
Yeah.
Vinny and I will get super competitive about it. It'll be real upsetting. Yeah.
Yes. This is man, you made some really, really interesting points because I've looked at this trailer maybe a dozen times, and I never I didn't put it together. You know what I mean? I was just like, wow, Battle Royale, Final Fantasy. I'm still just kind of, we're looking at these locations and we're going to be playing a Battle Royale game in these locations. But wow, that's a really good point. Like, what the heck? Like, why is the construction of Midgard looking like it's pretty much complete almost? Why is all this there? Is it a combat simulator? But if it is a combat simulator, how do they know what it's going to look like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the very first frame calls it Project Zero. Yeah. Do you know why that's significant? Don't answer, chat. I'm pointing at chat like they know I'm pointing at it. You do it. No, so Reactor Zero,
yes,
is what Deep Ground is built around.
Right.
So a lot of this points to it being a Deep Ground origin story.
I was wondering if that was the connection with Reactor Zero, Project Zero.
We know that they changed the age of Rufus in Remake's Ultimania to 30 years old. We've always wondered who Rufus's mom is. We might get that info.
Potential. Why is this a battle royale?
I know. Well, one thing, and I mentioned it earlier, and Tommy brought it up again, is we do know that First Soldier is going to have a place in Ever Crisis, which is a more story-driven narrative game. So maybe they fill in the bits there. So, because man, there's so much stuff that I really like. That has been gnawing on me since 1997. Like, who is Cloud's dad? Well, I can't. I I need to know that. Like, please, it could be dumb. Just
Yeah.
tell me. That's my thing, you know. Um,
I'd appreciate if it was just like just kind of touched on. I don't think we really need to know who Cloud's dad is. If Cloud has a dad, well, he does. But like if
he better okay. He better
if
not
it
have a dad. That's one of the. If this turns into
so
an Anakin
yeah,
Skywalker thing, I'm
I was
out.
going to manipulate the midichlorians in them, and you
Yeah,
know that's how we got Cloud. Uh, no, like I'd rather him not be like a substantial part of the story. Like
yeah.
I don't.
And that's what I
Yeah,
want. I want that. I
you
want
just want
that
to
to just
know.
be like a random dude. I want it
Okay.
to not be President Shinra. I'll get
Oh
down to it.
God.
Like that's still the oldest fan theory, and I hate it. And people are just like blonde people look alike. Okay, whatever, dude.
They got blonde hair. They got to be brothers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if I'd like that. I'd rather. I don't want it to be someone special. Like, just, it's kind of like the whole Ray situation again. It
yeah,
doesn't have to have someone special, um, but yeah. So there's so many story implications that could happen with 30
right.
years. And you mentioned that yeah, it will be covered in Ever Crisis, which is really cool. There is a lot of inconsistencies that you brought up to me, brought up during this, and now I'm stuck on it. Now I'm like, wait a second, a lot of different things. But as somebody in chat said, I don't think that canon consistency will be a priority. That was Don. Thank you so much for coming back and tuning in, Don. You watched the final podcast with us earlier. Um, so yeah, let's check in with chat. What's your thoughts on First Soldier? Let's see. We got. I just kind of want to check real quick. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it mentioned some First Soldier story will be included in Never Crisis? Yeah, from an interview. That was Tommy86. Yep, we said that. Baby Rufus. Maybe we'll find out who his mom might be. That's Phantom
Mm-hmm.
Valentine. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot stress how much I want Elmira to chase away soldier candidates from her front yard, broom in hand. That's coming from Ars Omnia.
Mm-hmm. I
That's
think,
great.
and I think that there's a great point made. I think by uh, by Don about canon consistency being a priority. That is a great
Mhm.
point. If there's any game they're going to play it fast and loose, it's this one. Like they want to be able to like take you to the places you recognize. They're not going to necessarily like be, particularly concerned about how it lines up. Um,
Mhm.
but I will say they have taken great lengths to maintain consistency in the past, like
Yeah.
Ultimania timelines, all that stuff. Uh, and are there mistakes? Of course, it's a huge, sprawling topic with a bunch of creative influences. Um, but like right off the bat, getting a young-looking President Shinra, the Type Zero reference, the fact that a lot of the places that we see are developmentally where they are supposed to be before the advent of before like sector 6 falls. And there's
Mhm.
even one really interesting segment that shows what looks like Wutai, and it's not the Don's mansion, but it's a series of buildings with Wutai architecture and construction, but it's in Midgar. You can see the ceiling. It's a completely new space. And my headcanon immediately created a backstory for this. That early in Midgar's construction, Wutai and Shinra were still not on terrible terms. And
Mhm.
when they may have allowed like an ambassadorial nation, like an embassy area, like a Wutai town,
There you go. Right there.
built underneath, right there, built underneath Midgar, and
Mhm.
a great place to have built that is underneath Sector 6, because we think that it was an accident that caused Sector 6 to collapse, but it seems very like Shinra to employ the same tactics over and over again. And the reason we might not see much Wutai construction under the plate is because they dropped a plate on it. And that would be a cool story to tell in this time frame. So, they are adding these details like that. So, there is potential for, for lore relevant stories. But again, it's a battle royale game. So truth might lie somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I have to take a look at the trailer again. From what I was kind of briefly kind of noticing, maybe the plate isn't as fully constructed as we're thinking it is.
Yeah,
The plate above did look like it was maybe not covering the distance that it should be.
right.
Um, so that might be something. Also, it was very, very sunny in these maps, so I know there's a lot of light
Yeah.
that seeped in the remake, but that could be something to think about
Okay.
too.
Okay. That reminds me. One
Yeah.
last dumb saying about Intergrade.
We're back to Intergrade.
It looks like they're in the on the edge. It looks like they're in Edge in episode Yuffie. Edge has a bunch of backstory that like you have to like read the director's commentary to even know about. But Edge was this part of underdeveloped, basically Undercity that stretched outside of Midgar, and that is where everybody moved to. And if you look at the parts that they're wandering through in episode Yuffie, you can see their relationship to the rest of the plate to place it right at Edge. That also works canonically with the Deep Ground reference, because Deep Ground apparently had a tunnel that leads to Edge. And we know that from Dirge of Cerberus. So the last thing on Intergrade, the
Nice.
last thing, like
Good little morsel of
of
information
6
there.
or 7 more last things, I'm sure.
Okay, so let's go on to let's. I mean, are you think we're ready to move on from first soldier?
Sure.
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
move on.
we can just come back.
Yeah, we'll
We
one
can't talk
last thing.
forever too. Yeah.
um, yeah. So let's go on to Ever Crisis. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just kind of reading. King says that. I mean, I'm most excited for Intergrade.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah. I am actually really excited about Ever Crisis. And you said earlier that this is for those fans that were like, man, this is for the fans that keep on telling me, or the people that keep on telling me that I wanted a 1-to-1 remake,
Right.
uh, which is not what I wanted. But yeah, so this is for those people who wanted that 1-to-1 remake, of Final Fantasy VII, the original.
Right.
My argument to that every time somebody tells me that is like, nope, chapter 1 of remake is exactly what I wanted.
Right.
chapter 1 was perfect. So anyways, so this is Ever Crisis covering the entire compilation. Does not cover remake though. That wasn't listed. So this looks awesome. Clark, like the first time I use your real name.
Nah.
Ooh, it felt weird. I'm not gonna lie to you.
That's right. You call me whatever you want, Mr. Fan TV.
Thank you, Mr. Baby Seal. Yeah, so this looks phenomenal, man. I really
Right.
love the art style, but what really tripped me up was out of nowhere this right here. We're looking at it right now.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, is this the same game? This is still the
Right.
mobile game, right?
Right.
And as we're watching this, I think it's just awesome. A nod to the original Final Fantasy VII, where you kind of go from this top-down, polygonal characters and
Yeah.
pre-rendered background, and then all of a sudden you go into a more realistic, or at least, yeah, it looks more realistic combat. And
It looks like, it's one of the benefits of Unreal Engine is its
yeah,
cross platform use. So it looks like they're literally taking models from Remake and putting
yeah,
them in there.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was also detailed that they will be doing this with every game,
Yeah.
from what I read. Every game. So like when you go to Crisis Core, I think we're going to see fully rendered, looking in remake style battles. That could
Yeah.
be a
Advent Children too. I mean,
Yeah,
we're gonna get to play Advent Children. And I
that's
will
pretty
say
insane.
my argument for Final Fantasy VII Remake not being listed is it did try and follow the letters so that you understood what they were trying to do in a super unsubtle way. So it says include, it wasn't in chronological order. It said Advent Children, Before Crisis,
Hmm.
Crisis Core, Dirge Cerberus, and now Ever Crisis.
Yeah,
And then it
release
said
order.
underneath entire compilation, which
Mhm.
was what EC meant the whole time, like secretly. Um, so
Nice.
so yeah, I think that's probably why Remake didn't make it in. I don't think that that it necessarily means we're dealing with a separate continuity, though.
Okay.
And I think the first soldier is is the reason that, and because they're adding canon in the Famitsu interview. The most exciting little bit about Ever Crisis to me was when Nomura detailed that they were adding a special story about
Hmm.
a legendary hero written by Nojima himself. Um, and so we're getting new canon, new
Yeah.
lore. So you do get into some bizarre, problematic stuff if you have like the true author of Final Fantasy VII,
Yeah.
Kazushige
Th-
Nojima,
Yeah.
writing canon into two separate continuities.
This is where I get to the point where I'm like, the theory that I see going around, it's like, there's no way that they're just, oh yeah, this is a separate thing. And then we're gonna re-release the entire compilation, add new canon to it, but it's
Yeah,
not going to affect remake at all.
right.
I don't think so. But yeah, no, that's exciting. The legendary hero, most likely Sephiroth. Or
It would elevate like Nomura to like Kojima or Yoshida status of trolling if it ended up being anybody else. Like that that is very,
Genesis.
and it's like a thank you to my fan. Sleep easy.
Thank you to my fan.
Yeah.
No plural.
Yeah. Look,
Oh man.
real quick on Genesis. Um, he wasn't that bad. Uh, it's just that it just felt like so. It felt like we were appeasing a single person's music tastes, and that bothered me. You know, that was really it. But like as a character, I'm not saying that Genesis is beyond repair in terms of like can he be added into like will Crisis Core with Genesis in Ever Crisis still be like fun and playable? I mean, I think it's an opportunity for uh for his character to get some redemption.
There
So
it is. There's the word, Gene. Said
Gene
redemption
knows me
before you.
so well.
That's it.
He knew I was setting up for that joke. Um, yeah. So my early on when we didn't know what the fuck was happening with Remake, it was like, uh, are they gonna like if they re-add Genesis and this is all just new stuff? I would love for them to like recast Genesis, maybe like gender bend Genesis, like something to really distance the character from the personality associated with it, because there was a lot of really easy to miss but cool connections that Genesis had to the overall lore, um, and also it was the mythology stuff, which I'm super into.
Mhm.
I really like Genesis tie to the Abrahamic side of of the mythology of Final Fantasy VII, because there's this, we've got these two worlds, these two competing like life systems that we're watching the war between. We're watching the Cetran world, the Gaian world, which is all based on like the Norse mythology stuff, merging with this new life system of Genova, which is all based on the Abrahamic stuff in real world history, and this is supposed to be a a retelling of world history in a strange way. Like Midgar was going to be New York at one point. That's what happened. Abrahamic religion essentially obliterated most other religions by taking parts of it and creating its own in the exact same way that Jehovah, aka Jehovah, and 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 its messiahs did to, say, Norse mythology. And so there was this way to tell that story, and I like that Genesis really cleanly, once Nojima got involved with his development, fit into that mythology. Because the thing about Dirge of Cerberus that I think really made it feel so disjointed was that Nojima had nothing to do with its design. And so Nojima had to take this character based on on a rock star and turn it into something. And he did the best damn job he possibly could in that situation, I think. So that's my end of Genesis, and I think that Sleep Easy will let me be his friend again now that I said
that. That's fair. Speaking of Sleep Easy, I believe watching his videos is probably the only thing that got me kind of a little bit more okay with Genesis. And I've already kind of come to terms with the fact that Remake, and this is just me, I don't think it's going to follow the original story. And that's something we can talk about too. But I don't think we're going to follow the original story as much as the developers want to tell you that, oh, from here on out, just, Final Fantasy VII will continue the way it always has.
Yeah. And that's really not what they said.
Not falling for that again.
Yeah. They didn't actually say that. They said things adjacent to that. They said a bunch of panicky responses, but I'm with you. I do think there will be divergences. Again, I think what they're trying to say is you're not going to miss out on any locations because of it. You're not going to miss out on any big events. And although the way it unfolds might be different, a new generation and you are going to re-experience some of those same core feelings and values. So I think there will be death, like permadeath. If that's who it was, I'm less certain about that. I'm less certain the same characters will die or they'll die in the same spot. I have no way of knowing that. But a part of me hopes that all of Cloud's potential romantic partners get killed just to eliminate shipping altogether.
No, man. No, now we'll get Cloud and somebody else. We'll ship them with someone else. All right, you can't take that away.
Cloud and Rosso, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, it'll never stop. You can't end that. You can't
get rid of that.
Yeah,
let's just let them hook up with both of them. Why not? Let's go.
But I agree with what you're saying. I think that they're setting it up to tell a newish
kill
story.
Cloud. That's it. Kill Cloud. Easy. Problem solved. There.
That's not super impossible. There are things about Cloud's relationship to Sephiroth in the canon that make him a prime candidate for either death or for a super fake out death. I think we might.
Well, there was one thing that has bothered me. Not bothered me, but I was just kind of letting my mind go that way. When Sephiroth says, as long as Cloud remembers Sephiroth, he's going to live on, and then how do you solve that? Either Sephiroth has a redemption, or Cloud is killed. And you kill Cloud, and then.
I hate the idea of a Sephiroth redemption so much.
Me too. God.
That I would somehow barely prefer Cloud's death over that. Barely. Yeah. And that's so cliche at this point that it just happened in 15. I'm a little over it.
I agree.
So but I don't know if that's where they're going. I kind of don't think so. I think at anything they'll tease to death, and that what Aerith's sacrifice is really about might be about because we don't know what she does with the to the portal. We don't know anything. Like we don't know if she's responsible for any of this. Like there's so much gray area. Like, but they
Mhm.
could be setting up a narrative chain for her sacrifice to be like, permanent, and it may be centered around his disconnection from Sephiroth. It could be something like that. It could be a bunch of different stuff. They might not know what it is yet, and
They
that's
might not.
that's
Oh
that's
God,
something
no!
that I've got
Don't do
to
the Star Wars.
as my favorite. My favorite thing is to theory craft. My favorite thing is to like say, hey, they've got this really clear direction. I can pick it out by just counting all the goddamn textures in the game. Like I'll figure it out. But there's a chance they haven't decided yet,
Oh
and
man.
I have to allow myself that space.
There's true. That's true. Just as long as they don't go the Star Wars sequel route, you know what I mean? You gotta have the stuff. You gotta have it ready to go.
We could do 2 or 3 podcasts just on that.
I am 100% on board for a Star Wars one day. Like we'll just do Final
Yeah,
Fan
we
of
could just do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
To kind of touch back on Ever Crisis for a moment. What's really cool about the combat system is that it is in fact goes back to the active time battle or the
Right.
turn-based traditional, not turn-based, but the traditional Final Fantasy VII
Right.
combat, but with the enhanced visuals of Remake. So you will notice that they're all standing in a line.
Hmm.
They're attacking, but you'll also notice Aerith has slipped in there into the scorpion fight.
Yep.
Um, what?
There's a couple things on that though. Like
Okay.
one, in the original demo
Yes,
of
and I
Final
was
Fantasy
gonna say.
VII,
Hmm.
Aerith is a part of your party despite not having any reason to be there.
Yeah,
Um,
and Tifa at one point as well was in one of the variants of the demo.
the other thing is that this is a gotcha game, probably. I mean,
Oh,
it
100%.
they don't
That's a
say that it's a gotcha game. It's free with in-app purchases, which just basically means
mhm.
gotcha. A lot of gotcha games, and I'm a very fervent follower of Dissidia Opera Omnia. That's my favorite mobile game, and it's an awesome gotcha game. Like I was so against gotcha as a thing until that game. Like that game is done in a way that I'm way in. Um,
Mhm.
the way that Dissidia tells the story of Opera Omnia is that you can bring whoever you want to the party,
Mhm.
but that does not indicate who's actually going to participate in the cutscenes. And it's very
Exactly.
possible that they just maintain that as a through line in this. Um,
Yep. That was
I
my
also,
initial thought
yeah,
as well. Yeah.
yeah.
That was
So it could
my
be
initial
something
thought.
as simple as that. Like, so we may be able to like replay these chapters,
I can
with
see Reno. I can see Reno
Reno
fighting
and yeah,
along. Yeah.
Reno
Uh
and Sephiroth and
yeah, I can see these the gotcha system going on.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe you'll go into the battle with different characters that you can either spend real money on or hope to get them so I can definitely see that, and they will not impact the story outside of battle,
right.
which is going to be what you want to see retold. So that was something I wanted to touch on, just because Aerith kind of snuck in there, and
Hmm.
like you said, that's a really fun nod, whether it was intentional or not. Um, I think it was to kind of like say,
Yeah,
hey, remember the first demo?
yeah.
So a lot of really cool stuff coming at you. I do want to talk about you mentioned an Ifrit mythology morsel for us. Would you like to
So
do that?
I would like to do that, and thank you guys all for hanging in this far, by the
Mm-hmm.
way, and for just participating. I hope that if there's anybody that's like new to Final Fan TV, that you regularly tune in, both here and on YouTube, if they ever allow those to get uploaded without DMCA stuff. Um, uh, and as far as this channel, I think it's very close to getting affiliate status. And so
That's right.
the moment that happens, please subscribe. And this doesn't benefit me at all, but I will be reminding all of you, please get on to Final Fan TV and subscribe. I am among the lowest profile guests that they've had on their show. They've had some cool people. So please check that out.
Man, thank you so
So
much, Baby C. I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
so I have a background in collegiate level mythology, and how that relates to Final Fantasy is pretty obvious right off the bat. A lot of you know that most of the summons were lifted very lazily from Dungeons and Dragons. But by the time Nojima got involved, the reverence for mythology had branched into a new level. And for my frequent followers, I'm sorry for repeating this, but one of the things that Nojima did prior to just watch, look at that
Yeah.
beautiful butterfly. Oh, oh, America. Um,
Oh, America.
one of the things that that Kazushige Nojima worked on before his involvement with Final Fantasy was a series on Greek mythology, the Heracles series, and you can tell from his writing of that he didn't have like a appropriative view of mythology. It wasn't just like a fun like nod, like you just say these, fun sounding spiritual words and then throw it into Evangelion and say that you're profound. Like it wasn't like that. Not a dig on Evangelion. Evangelion is apparently great, but Heracles series represented that he had a true and fundamental knowledge of the way Greek mythology really was. And when he got involved in Final Fantasy, well, he was interviewed prior to the production of Final Fantasy VII and asked what mythology set he would like to explore further. And he said Norse mythology. And that made its way deep into the mythos of Final Fantasy VII. But one of the things about mythology is that Wikipedia just does not cut it. You think you can kind of glean what you need to glean, get the stories that you need to get to establish a lore. But you have to remember that when most of these games were made, and when and Nojima in particular was a slow adopter of the internet. He got most of his learning from books, and he in fact didn't own a computer until after 7, and we know that because he bought one with his bonus money, and then went on the internet and looked at commentary for Final Fantasy VII, saw that he hurt people's feelings by killing Aerith, and then proceeded to kill nobody in Final Fantasy VIII, thus making it a terrible game. I'm just kidding, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. I mean, it's still a great game. I mean, most Final Fantasy are AAA titles, but could have killed some folks in that game.
Somebody could have died,
Just that would have been great.
Somebody needs him killing.
But so this is, I'm gonna read this aloud. This is my mythology morsel. I've done a series of these. Some of you that know have seen my Carbuncle mythology morsel, and I'll be able to finally post those outside of private Discord servers starting today. But this one took me by surprise. I started researching Ifrit because somebody who I think is in the chat, hey, check out Ifrit, and so I pulled some strings. I got some books, and I did some digging in some unlikely places and found surprisingly relevant data. So I'm going to read that for you guys now. And this is the world premiere of the Ifrit mythology morsel, and the title is The OG Summon, aka You Gotta Rub Him the Right Way.
I'm a genie in a bottle.
The story of Ifrit cannot be told without establishing first the Jinn, the race of supernatural entities to which he belongs. The Jinn for whom we derive the word genie, are among the most ubiquitous entities in recorded mythological history. Though primarily associated with Arabic and Quranic mythology, the concept may date as far back as Mesopotamia. The jinn are represented in so many contexts and through so many cultures that one could study the topic for years and merely scratch the surface. So I'll stick to just some juicy bits that directly relate to Final Fantasy VII. The jinn are a race of supernatural beings that manifest in endless variety of ways. They provide the origin story for many of the most famous supernatural legends, ranging from the ghoul, the succubus, even the vampire. Shortly before the advent of Islam, the jinn were then integrated into Judaic demonology, which is a thing, by the way. They are represented as either demons or Nephilim. Nephilim are demon-human hybrids. Not all were considered malevolent, as many were known to fall in love with and sometimes even marry human beings. The lore of the jinn is so rich that they are even described as having their own society, complete with political parties and a home nation. And this one really blew me away. According to the collections from both the Babylonian Talmud and the Hadith, which is Quranic oral tradition, this nation of jinn, called Jinnistan, is the ethereal homeland of these supernatural beings. It is centered around a region called Mount Goth, a mountain that is made of emeralds. These emeralds hold the spirits and knowledge of fallen jinn and provide Jinnistan with the power to stay hidden from the corporeal world. This land is often referred to in apocryphal Talmudic texts as Ardu al-Miyad, which in Arabic translates directly to the promised land. There are many jinn references in 7, too many to list, in fact. So I will move to jinn, but I will just say Lamia, Lamasu, the succubus, the incubus, all of those are jinn. Ghoul is the worst boss in Final Fantasy VII Remake if you're doing no healing run, also a jinn. So we'll go to our man of the hour. The Ifrit, or Afrit, are a class of notoriously malevolent jinn, almost universally referred to as demonic entities. The Ifrit are described as dark, vengeful beings. Their form is meant to inspire terror in those unfortunate enough to encounter them. Though accounts of their physical appearance do vary, they're almost always described as horned demons with 2 black wings. Like most jinn, they are commonly associated with the elements of fire and wind. These beings are often bound to an object or a place, usually as a punishment for their sins. Of the many Afrit myths, a few stand apart as highly relevant to Final Fantasy. In fact, it could be argued that the very concept of the Final Fantasy summon was derived from these legends. The most famous Afrit legend comes from the folktale Aladdin, which is commonly associated, although falsely, with 1001 Nights, a collection of Middle Eastern folktales. Despite what Disney tells you, the legend tells the story of an orphan boy who encounters not 1, but 2 jinn. One jinn was bound to a ring, the other an oil lamp. So the age-old tale of a genie in the bottle is about Ifrit. The next and perhaps more obscure tale is about Solomon, the king of Israel from 970 to 931. And he is a biblical figure and famed temple builder, but in apocryphal texts, he is known to have used the Ifrit for slave labor. In the Testament of Solomon, which is again part of the Babylonian Talmud, he uses a ring gifted to him by the Archangel Michael to enslave a labor force comprised of these demonic jinn. The ring's name, the Seal of Solomon, is used very commonly in Final Fantasy titles. The all-star cast of Jinn slaves included like the worst of the worst, from Asmodeus to Beelzebub. In one version of the events, it was through Solomon's dominance of these Ifrit that the Temple of Solomon was actually built. And just a note, this is a simplification of a very complex string of narratives, but we don't have 3 years to put it all together. The last tale, and I think the most interesting one about the concept of Ifrit used as a summon, is from the tale of Ben Yefu. He's a Moroccan saint known as the Sultan of the Jinn. When Ben Yefu was a child, he encountered a power Ifrit at an oasis in desolate wastelands outside of Marrakesh. The Ifrit would bring harm to anyone who attempted to gather water from said oasis. He regularly terrified the locals and brought great suffering to the surrounding land. During his encounter with this malignant being, Ben Yefu was visited by the ethereal forms of his ancestors. When his ancestors appeared to him, they made themselves known as the Saints of the Jinn, or the Ancients of the Jinn. His ancestors told him that he alone was worthy of their power. When his ancestors disappeared, Ben Yefu found himself face to face with the Ifrit, who took the form of a lion. Out of instinct, Ben Yefu blew on the Ifrit, revealing his true form as a fiery, horned monstrosity. From this moment forward, Ben Yefu had complete command of the Ifrit and any other Jinn he encountered. Ben Yefu's greatest feat, however, was his defeat of a legendary Black Sultan. The Black Sultan was a title that described many tyrannical sultans, but within the context of this legend, it likely referred to the son of Shemharesh, the king of darkness. While on his pilgrim, Ben Yefu entered the Black Sultan's territory. The Black Sultan heard of his encroachment and responded immediately, riding with his entire army to meet Ben Yefu. He demanded that Ben Yefu leave immediately or face total annihilation. Ben Yefu refused. Enraged by the young saint's hubris, the hateful sultan commanded his army to charge. In a mere instant, Ben Yefu leveled the army. With hardly a movement, he summoned his own army of vengeful Jinn, Ifrit leading the charge. The Black Sultan had no choice but to concede. Ben Yefu's only demand was to be declared a saint in the Black Sultan's territory. The Sultan responded with an even greater declaration. In front of his subject, he declared Ben Yefu as a sultan. From that moment forward, Ben Yefu was known by all as the Sultan of the Jinn. So thanks, guys, for listening. That was the world premiere of some deep, deep mythology. And I do have citations and sources if anybody thinks I just pulled those connections out of my ass. But like, I was blown away by the Promised Land one and the Ancients one in particular.
Oh my God, that is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that here. You do have some questions in chat if you wanna take a look.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's insane, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was absolutely just amazed the entire time. So really cool information.
Ultima, that's awesome. That's very cool. And so a lot of Jinn lore, a lot of this deep Jinn lore does come from either like interpretation, like written interpretations of the hadith, which makes it generally kind of unreliable. For those that don't know, and I'm sure Ultima could confirm, the hadith is intentionally spoken word. It's intentionally oral tradition. So there's an incentive to never write that stuff down. So that does taint its reliability a little bit. But most of these stories come from what's generally considered apocryphal texts, like for instance, the Babylonian Talmud, and from like actual written epitaphs that are placed at different sites. Like when we talk about to Green Sultan or Ben Yefu. There is a actual temple of Ben Yefu in Morocco where this story is outlined, and the quote unquote oasis that that the Afrit was guarding is in fact a real place outside of Marrakesh. And so a lot of the the story of that comes from things that have a unclear history. So I hope you recognize that I am trying to treat the Quran in particular and Islam as an entity separate from these myths. If I'm making myself clear, I hope so.
Very cool. Does anybody have any questions for Baby Seal before we go ahead and close out the show? Any questions that you'd like to ask, whether it could be about that really awesome morsel that he shared about Ifrit, or Final Fantasy VII Intergrade related, or any of the other games, or just in general. We're going to go ahead and close out the show in just a minute or two, but we'd love to take another question for you guys. This is your chance to basically ask anything of Baby Seal, Schrodinger's Baby Seal. You know what? Why did you choose Schrodinger's Baby Seal? That's my question. What's the reason behind the name?
It's a hilariously cruel quantum physics joke that lands with all the ladies, obviously.
Yeah.
No, so it's based on Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger's cat is it's a thought experiment about whether something is dead if it can't be observed as dead. Erwin Schrodinger came up with it. That's why it's his cat. It involves a cat in a box. And I thought it was always kind of a intensely cruel thought experiment. And I thought, well, what is an even cuter animal than a cat to make that funnier? And so I chose a baby seal, and that was 20 years ago, and I don't know how to let things go. That's why I'm still a Final Fantasy VII fan. So there you go. Yeah, by the way, I did want to thank you, Ultima, for saying that. So one of the things that happened with the Jinn's history is they eventually got merged into the understanding of demons. So they became demons in the Quran, and not just the Quran, like in Judaic demonology, like I said, the Talmud that includes the Testament of Solomon, which is a non-canon text, is not explicitly Islam based and sort of predates Islam. Jinn had already sort of worked their way into the mythos of demons. So that is a cool thing that you brought up. Vincent Graymore's question.
Yeah, I'm going to read it out loud so that way, just any audio listeners might be able to hear what's saying. He says, why have I seen fans claiming that Holy and Meteor are being blood magic lately? By that meaning that there needed to be death to use them.
I don't know the origin of that, because there isn't actual proof that that's necessary. It just happens to be that you can correlate some sacrifice to both, right? Like you could infer that maybe Aerith's death was necessary to quote unquote activate Holy. There's nothing in Ultimania that confirms that. We have no idea what Holy even did, how it works. Like, did it, like ultimately it didn't stop Meteor. So like the live stream did it like slow it down a little? I don't even know. Like it's ultra vague. It's never clarified. Same with the black materia. We don't really know how the black materia works. How materia has all these weird descriptions, and there's a lot of the sort of unsubstantiated headcanon of a lot of people regarding materia comes from cut content from Final Fantasy VII, where Sephiroth describes the summons as these beings that are, sort of enslaved into materia. They go through the same process that soldiers go through, and then become these monsters, and then that's how we get summoned materia. That's in the cut content. And then in Remake, we do see like at least a nod to that, like with this concept of Shiva being the summon that sealed Genova into the Northern Crater, um, which is a cool addition. And I know this is too much info, but in my head canon, the reason that Genova looks the way that she does is because Genova is a copycat, and she was in the process of miming the appearance of Shiva when she was frozen, and that's why she looks kind of Shiva-esque.
That
But
was such a
that's just
cool like
my headcanon.
I read
Um,
that. Either I read that or I was watching you on
yeah,
one of your Twitch streams. But yeah, that was such a cool like theory
I
that she
think,
was
and
trying to
they
do
could
that.
totally do that. They might have done that already.
Yeah.
But so, and same with the black material. They say that that might be blood magic because there was sacrifice involved. But let's talk about what that sacrifice was. That was a puppet. Only person that died, turning that temple into the black materia was Kate Sith's doll body. I refuse
Right.
to say Ketchi, by the way. Like they're kind of
I say
pull my
cat.
tongue out.
Yeah, Kate Sith. Yeah, and now I've heard it. I've heard Catchy so much, and I'm like, all right, guys. I said Kate Sith my whole life.
Maybe,
Okay.
maybe I'll change it. Maybe I'll change it. Um, but so theoretically, off camera, uh, Sephiroth may have like um, used his remnants, or not the remnants. I'm sorry, the clones, the numbered clones. They all could have died in service of the black materia being actually used, because we don't know what happened. He like Tifa just wakes up and there's this big meteor in the sky. So maybe, but again, this is all stuff that has no canonical like proof. It's just conjecture based on like a little bit of information.
Ultima says, "Do you think Yuffie will be older this time?" I think she looks about the age that she looks about 16 in the trailer. What do you think?
I I kind of think um, it is a little bit of a risk, like Ultima is saying, um,
What's the risk?
because then she's 16, and there's this age of consent thing with put, putting her in like bizarre situations, or even like it.
What the Wu
Not
Tai
that they
thing
wouldn't, not that
when
they
you're Don
wouldn't,
Corneo?
not that they would, but just that like there's more freedom in having an 18-year-old character and putting
Mm.
her in situations, and you know, so there's a chance
Because
they might do that because
like
of
they
China.
adjusted the age of Rufus, they could adjust the age of Yuffie a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
I think she
But
looked about 16 in the
yeah, she
trailer.
looked about 16. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the reason for Rufus's age change was probably it has to do with the first soldier.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I'd say 16 is I don't see where that could be an issue. Like I mean, I know when you get to with Don Corneo again, that's going to be a little interesting, but yeah,
That's true.
that'll
That's
be a
true.
little interesting. Um yeah, so ESC 16 in the OG.
Yeah, she was.
We're good to go. All right. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching this one. And thank you so much for keeping active in the chat. Having the conversation with us. Really, really enjoyed this one. Uh, Clark, Schrodinger's baby seal, the Mr. Baby Seal, the cutest of all animals. He said Schrodinger's cutest of all animals.
Um,
When I asked you what's the reason behind your name, I wasn't expecting that one. That's awesome.
I aim
That's
to
awesome.
impress.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me on, and also just for people that maybe were at this one but weren't at the last one. You're a trooper. You've been on stream talking to people for like 5 total hours today. So
Right.
if you combine these
Don
two, so
as
uh,
well and Vincent. Yeah.
yeah. So
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much
hanging
for
in there.
spending.
And
Yeah. spent a whole day with Final Fantasy V. Wow,
Yeah.
thank you for that. I really appreciate that. That gives us a much needed boost in confidence that we're doing something that you guys enjoy. Thank you for all the new follows that we got during this stream. Thank you guys so much for that. Really appreciate it. And yeah, once again, Clark, thank you so much for jumping onto this discussion, the premiere episode of Final Forecast. From here on out, Final Forecast, we're planning to be, a little bit shorter, maybe like 30 minutes. But this is the premiere episode, and we had a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
And
A lot of big
yeah,
news.
a
Yeah.
lot of big news. And not to mention just that really, really cool information about Ifrit. I was just I was enthralled the whole time, man. Thank you so much for that. I will post a link with the starting point of that little morsel. So that way you can click the link, it'll jump right to the little morsel if you want to watch it again or share it. Please do. I encourage that. Also, when it goes live on YouTube, please check it out, give it a thumbs up and stuff like that. But once again,
I will post it written in an infographic so that it's easy for you guys to dissect and criticize.
perfect. Yes. So please follow. Do you wanna throw out your handle? If I mean I feel like chat
I think
knows,
you
but
can
just
the chat all knows me, and then you can throw it on a video later. It's not a big deal.
sure. Yep. The
Um,
the link will be in the description.
yeah.
So check that out. So once again, thank you. And thank you, Baby Seal, for the religion and history lesson. Yeah. Wow, man. It's it's 6 in the morning over there, man. It spent the entire night watching Final Fan TV. Awesome. Yeah, so yeah, thank you guys so much. We're out. Thank you, Schrodinger's Baby Seal. Thank you, Clark. Appreciate
Bye,
it.
guys. Love you all.
Bye bye.